right, fam. So what's going on? It's good to see you. Good to be with you on this. I would say, like, is it fall yet? Technically, no, not yet. Oh, I'm just like begging for fall, man. Like begging. I know it's supposed to be like 87 today. Come on, summer, just leave. You'll be back next year. I know you will. Maybe next week. When is fall? Anybody know? Somebody do the research. 21st. That's next week. So next week I'll say, good to see you on this beautiful fall day, you know. But this week, yes, it's still summer. So it's good to see you on this end of summer day. Anyway, couple announcements real quick. I sent out a email. My emails, I feel like they're getting longer. I'm so sorry. There's just information, and I'm long-winded, and so I'm long-winded with my typing also. So there's a survey on there. It's like 6 questions, I think, 8 questions. And many of you have filled it out, but if you haven't, do it because because I just want to get some info so we can make the best decisions moving forward on the when, where, how we do certain things. So we've started a process of training some leaders to lead community groups and things like that, but we're trying to find out times and when is best for everybody. And we're not going to be able to get everybody, obviously, but we're going to do the best that we can to do something that's going to be effective and last a long time, right? So please fill out that survey. There's a couple other questions in there too, but I'm just trying to get a grid and a gauge for what's best for us as a church. There's also some things about some potential teaching series coming up. I just want your feedback. It's kind of a way I can take the temperature and the pulse of the body, right? And just see kind of what our biggest needs are or interests are, right? Anyway, fill that out. The next thing is next Sunday, September 25th, that fall Sunday. Ladies, you probably already got a text or will get a text soon, but we're going to go and we're going to celebrate the departure of one of our beloved. Dana is leaving us. All good things, though. I will let her do the details, but she's relocating, and so, I just come celebrate her after church next week. The ladies are getting together, and you'll have more information that's not going to come from me, so that's all the information I have. So, love you all, and I hope you join. I won't be there. Not because I wouldn't want to be, but I am not a lady, okay? I'm not, so I don't qualify. That's just what it is. All right. Culture's getting weird, I don't qualify, all right? So anyway, we're going to continue in our series, GOAT. I promise it's getting close to the end, right? We've got the gray slide now. We're moving forward. We're going to hit the end of chapter 10. So if you have your Bibles, turn to the end of chapter 10. We'll be in verses 19 to 39. I probably should. Yeah, 19 to 39. I had to second guess myself. Like, wait a minute. 19 to 39. So the second half of chapter 10. A lot of cool stuff in there. But this is kind of a pivot point in the letter where we sort of start making the descent, right? The writer has made all the comparisons, showed all the reasons why Jesus is greater than any other element of the Old Testament or any other system that's been in place, any other person that we've looked up to, from Moses to the angels themselves, to the sacrificial system, to the high priest, to the figure Melchizedek. The authors made this case why Jesus is much greater than all of it, and there's nowhere else to go. And now he starts to make his descent and say, therefore, here's how we respond. Here's what we do. I really like the end of this letter. Next week, we'll cover the very famous Hebrews 11 about faith. But this week, we got this little hinge text, and I love it. It's one of my favorite spaces in the book. So let's pray, and then we'll start reading in verse 19. Father, in the name of Jesus, just pray for our time together that it is fruitful. It's fruitful to our hearts and our minds. It's fruitful in our lives when we leave, that we come to just know you better, understand you better, and take action, Lord, as a result of who you are. Bless this time in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So let's start in verses 19 to 25. Let's read that together. If you don't have your Bibles, the words will be right there. Wow, we're getting good at that, Sebastian. We're getting good at that, man. Got my Vanna White on. Let's read. In my Bible, this section is called the full assurance of faith. Verse 19 says, therefore, brothers, which should be seen as brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way that he opened for us through the curtain, that is, through his flesh. And since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day drawing near. He gives us a little wrap up. Therefore, what's a therefore? As a result of all the things we've just talked about, right? As a result of having confidence to enter the holy places, right? We talked about that, right? Therefore, as a result by the blood of Jesus, and not the blood of goats and rams, by the new living way he opened through his flesh. Since we have this great high priest, since we have this open way, since we have this confidence, since all of these things we just talked about, verse 22, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, because they've been sprinkled clean. See, this transitions from here's who Jesus is and all these things to now as a result of that, let's take action. Now as a result of who we know Jesus to be and who he is, let's move somewhere. And the first thing the author tells us is let's draw near. Let's draw near to Jesus, move closer to Jesus, move close to God. Now this obviously isn't talking about like geographically, right? Or in some kind of tangible way, like we could step closer to Jesus. But in a spiritual way where we draw close to God through a number of different avenues. We talk a lot about disciplines, and we talk about how we're careful when we talk about disciplines, lest somebody walk out of here and think they got a Bible read to be saved, or they got to pray a certain way to be saved, or they got to fast to be saved. Let's not view those things as means of salvation, right? We've talked about this, but as means of drawing near to God. So if the conclusion of who Jesus is sums up in moving toward him, shouldn't we do that? Shouldn't we be a people that move close to Jesus? Then he gives us another let us. Let us hold fast the confession without wavering. What does that mean? Let us take a stand firm in our faith and not move. Why? Because of all the things that Jesus is and all the things that he's accomplished. So how do you stand firm in your faith? How do you hold the line in your faith? Because that's what he's asking us to do. Move toward him, stand firm, don't waver. See, I think the answer to that, how we stand firm, is the same thing as the answer to the first let us. The closer we draw near to Jesus, the more firm we can stand in our faith because we know him. The more firm I am with him, the more I know him. It's the same in our earthly relationships here. Like, marriage is the easiest example. I am more secure and firm in my marriage the closer I am with my wife. The closer you are with your wife, the closer you are with your husband. Your relationship is what takes you to a firm stance. It's the same way with Jesus. The relationship we have with him is what makes us stand more firm. He gives us another let us in 24. Let us consider how to stir one another up. So we should draw near to Jesus as a result of what he's done. We should stand firm in our confession because we know who he is. And then we should look to one another and encourage one another toward love and good works. So we have this inward drawing near to Jesus and standing firm in our faith, and this outward, now you do the same. Now let me encourage you to stay together. And he says, don't stop meeting together. There was a habit of some, because of persecution and a number of different trials, where people would stop meeting together. Well, that's the how you encourage one another. You keep meeting together. You keep being together. So as a result of Jesus being this great high priest, sprinkling us clean with his blood, as a result of all that we've come to know him to be, here's what you do. Draw near to him, stand firm in him, and encourage one another to do the same. And I think practically, it's incredibly easy. The more we spend time with Jesus, the more we're with him. Remember that story with the disciples? They are getting approached right after Jesus leaves by the Pharisees, and they're questioning them, and they're like saying how shocked they were because they were untrained, ordinary men. But do you remember what else they said? But it was evident that they'd been with Jesus. Man, there's something about being with him that just rubs off on you. Could be the whole Son of God thing, creator of the universe. But there's just something about it. The more I spend time with Jesus, the more Jesus comes out. The more I'm in my word, the more I trust the scriptures. The more I pray, the better I feel like I know him. The more I fast, the closer I feel to him. In proximity. I don't know how it happens, it just happens. And the result of that is I encourage the people around me to move towards Jesus. And not with smacking them in the face with Bible verses, but with explaining how I've got a real and tangible relationship with the God of the universe and there's nothing better. But why? Because I know him. I've spent time with him. See, we can be untrained, ordinary people. But when you spend time with Jesus, it becomes evident to the world around you that you've been with Jesus. And we live in microwave generation, right? We want everything fast, right now. If a website doesn't work, we go to another website. If the internet's too slow, we hop off the internet and use our LTE. If our LTE is too slow, we hop on the Wi-Fi. If something won't work, we get rid of it. If I don't feel like cooking dinner, I've got a microwave. We want everything fast and in a hurry, right? And I just got to be honest, a relationship with Jesus doesn't really work like that. I suppose it can. That could be your experience, and I hope it is. But generally speaking, our relationship with Jesus doesn't work like that. He's not a genie where we rub the Bible and smoke comes out and God answers our prayers. When we read time and again of the people of God who are real close to him, who he answers, like we talked about Elijah months ago, right? During our prayer series. And Elijah prays and it stops raining for 3.5 years. And then he prays again and it starts raining. Like he wasn't just like, oh, Lord, we need a sign. Let's warm up these tablets, Lord. The people are asking. Just lost my spot. Didn't think that one through. It came because Elijah knew God. And God knew Elijah. So when he prayed, God responded. Not as a genie, but out of someone with deep personal connectivity to someone. Like, this is my prophet. I'm pleased with him, and I will make my name great when he prays. It was birthed out of something. Let's go to our first carryout. Our confidence through Christ should motivate us. When I say motivate, I'm talking about motivate to action, motivate to work, and not motivate to go to work. Although I think your relationship with Jesus could probably motivate you to go to work too. But it's the confidence we have in him, through him, to be able to approach the throne of grace that should propel us to everything we do, every kind of action we take. Jesus' sacrifice, the things he did is so sufficient. It's so final that there's no way we shouldn't be confident drawing near to God, to boldly approach the throne of grace, as we talked about earlier. And if we don't feel like we can do that, really have to look at our lives, because one of two things is happening. Either we're not relying on the sufficiency of that sacrifice, or there could be something in our life that is maybe telling us we're not relying on the sufficiency. See, one's a head thing. It's hard for me to believe such a sufficient sacrifice, that I could boldly approach God because of what Jesus has done. And then there's my life doesn't line up with my confession. It almost has to be one of those two things. Because your conscience could be telling you, yeah, examine yourself. Or your heart, which can be deceitfully wicked, could be telling you, you're not really that close to Jesus. You don't really know him like that. But if we look at him for all he is, for who he is, understanding the first 10 chapters of this book, Hebrews, and all that it means that Jesus accomplished, we can be certain with full confidence, full assurance of faith that I can approach him. Because he is great and he is mighty. And I didn't tell Alex to sing that song. I just quoted you. But he is. So it's our confidence in what he's done that should motivate us. Because there's this other side of the coin where we can motivate ourselves because things are the right thing to do, because they're good things to do. And it's not that we shouldn't do them. Sometimes things just require obedience. It just is what it is. But we'll burn out. Let the Spirit be with us. Let Christ compel us to press on. Verses 26 to 31, he gives a warning. And so this text is broken up in a way where he's sort of saying, hey, this is what you should do, how you should, your disposition in light of who Christ is. But let me warn you of something real quick. And this is what he says: for if we go on sinning deliberately, after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. Anyone who set aside the law of Moses dies without mercy on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much worse punishment do you think will be deserved by the one who has trampled underfoot the Son of God and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified and has outraged the Spirit of grace? For if we know him who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay, and again the Lord will judge his people, it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. If you remember, the last thing he said in those previous set of verses was encourage one another all the more as the day draws near. What day is he talking about? It's a capital D in my Bible. The day the Lord comes to judge the living and the dead. Judgment Day, whatever day you want to call it. The day he comes back to take his people to be with him and judge the adversaries. And that's why he gives this warning. But if you go on sinning deliberately, there's no sacrifice for that. This is further illustration from the Old Testament. When we read through the law, there's no sacrifice in the Old Testament law for a deliberate, high-handed, intentional sin against the Lord. Did you know that? There's no sacrifice for that. Somebody who said, I know God, I'm one of his people, don't care what he says, I'm going to do that. There was no sacrifice for that. That wasn't in the sacrificial system. The punishment, the consequences for that kind of sin, do you know what it was? Death. See, I think sometimes we can be disconnected from the seriousness and the consequences of sin. Because I think sometimes the general terms here, I'm not talking about you unless it resonates with you, then let's talk. But I think sometimes the New Testament church, just in general, right? We get disconnected from the penalty of sin. We do exactly what he's talking about. We trample on the Son of God. We insult grace because we just say, oh, I can do what I want and Christ will be there. And while there's some truth to that, the scripture is clear. If we go on sinning deliberately after receiving knowledge of the truth, there is no longer a sacrifice for sin. Jesus didn't die for that. There was never a sacrifice for that. So what does that mean? If I sin, God's done with me? It doesn't mean that either. It's weird, right? But the thing is, if our posture towards God, this is what it's talking about. If our posture towards God is, I'm going to go do what I want despite what you say, Jesus didn't die for that. That's not what a Christian does. So if your heart posture towards God is, I'm a Christian, but I do what I want, sinning deliberately, seeing things in this book that he says, no, go the other direction, and you're like, I don't care. Even if you don't say that with your mouth, do you say that with your actions? That's not a Christian. That's not a follower of Jesus. They would not have recognized that person as a member of the way. So why do, general sense, we do that? Why do we think it's, the penalty is listen to what, but there's no sacrifice for that, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. That is not something I would want my worst enemy to sign up for. The fiery fury of God unleashed on someone. And he's talking to the church. He's not talking to unbelievers. He's talking to God's people. Encourage one another as the day draws near, because if you keep going on sinning deliberately, there's no sacrifice for that. And if you have no sacrifice, where are you? If Jesus' sacrifice hasn't paid your debt, where are you? Where are we? Hopeless, helpless, depraved, destined for hell. But we can't detach ourselves from the seriousness of sin. The church has done, I found, monumental job of doing that. And it's unfortunate. Sin is serious. Sin is the reason for his atonement in the first place. So when we look at the Son of Man lifted up, I'll never know how much it costs to see my sins upon that cross. Come on, we just sung it. The cost was immense. God died on a tree for us. God became a man and died at the hands of his creation. That was the weight and the penalty for my sin. That's the weight of your sin. Sin is not something to just hop over like it's nothing. Oh, I fell again today, but the Lord is faithful. I don't know if you know God if that's your disposition towards sin. He killed his son for sin. People were forever, eternally separated from God and destined to hell because of sin. And I'm not even a fire and brimstone preacher. This is just the word. Sin separated humans from God. It's page 3. But it's like our disposition sometimes. What I don't want us to walk out of here with our heads down and our tails tucked between our legs. But what I do want us to walk out of here in part getting is this next carryout. Living in deliberate sin rejects the gospel. It strips the gospel of its power and says it actually didn't really do anything for me. It's just a good story about a good teacher who died in my place. That's not the gospel. It's transformative. I've died and I'm a new creation in Christ Jesus. The old is dead and the new has come. The old me should be buried when I was baptized. There's got to be a change. And listen, if there's not a change, don't fake it. Faking it, don't do it. This isn't trying to strive for some moral perfectionism. This isn't behavior modification. It's an inward change by a holy God. And he gives us all the tools to do it. So next time our flesh is tempted, because it will be tempted. Mine will be tempted. Yours will be tempted. It's impossible, the scripture says, that no temptation will come. It will come. But next time we're looking at that temptation, I want you to think of this. If we go on sinning deliberately, where are we? Who do we really claim to know? It's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Man. I just want us to see the seriousness of sin and not play with it. And if you do something, God's not done with you. Don't take that disposition either. Right? Like, I know then you can say, like, well, what are you saying then? That's hard. It's hard because we may sin. It's very likely we're going to sin. But our heart can't be in a place that's unrepentant and just like, it doesn't really bother me that much, because it bothers God. It bothered him enough to kill his son. Verse 32. But recall, this is like the good part, okay? But recall the former days when after you were enlightened and endured hard struggle and sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion on those in prison. You joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Therefore, don't throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that when you've done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. For yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. Like, after that warning, like, hey, listen, like, don't be deceived about this thing with sin. He goes on to say, but think about the fruit in your life. Think about the way you've endured, and you've endured with people who have had to endure. You've suffered, you've been tried, and you've stood firm. See, that's fruit that you're with him. And he says of those people, those kind of people who are his, don't shrink back. So don't be afraid. Don't shrink back. We're those who endure and persevere through faith. And that's our third and final carry out for today. Faith helps us persevere. It's by faith. It's by trusting and believing in the gospel that we're able to persevere. And it's trusting and believing in the gospel that produces fruit in our lives. It's trusting and believing in the gospel that keeps us. It's trusting and believing in the gospel that helps us say no to temptation, so we don't go on sinning deliberately, because we've been bought with a price. He paid the price. And if he's changed us and changing us from within, we are walking out our life with him, being sanctified by his Holy Spirit. He's teaching us a better way and a new way. He's saying, like, the day's coming, and it won't be long. And he'll return. Now, I wanted to make this carry out like, Christ is coming back. That wasn't really the main point of this section, but got to be true to it. But that truth still remains. He's coming back. So what are you persevering for? You're persevering for that day. That capital D day that he mentioned in verse 25. The day when he comes back and he takes all of his faithful, all who have persevered, all who have endured, all who have turned from their old life and turned to Christ alone for salvation. And he says, come with me. I'm here for you, my bride. And his church goes into eternity with him forever in victory, where there's no more pain, no more tears, no more anguish, no more sin, nothing to tempt you and pull you away from the lover of your soul and the destroyer of death. It's with him forever alone. forever and ever and ever. And it requires faith, a mustard seed of faith, a tiny seed that just is wild enough to just believe this gospel, that God could have become a man, lived a perfect life, died for our sin, and raised from the dead and ascended to heaven to be with God, and lives to make intercession for his people. Just enough to believe that truth, enough that when he comes, he'll find you, the righteous, living by faith. He'll find me, the righteous, living by faith. Because if we've come to know him, verse 39 should be just the biggest encouragement. We're not those who shrink back. Christ lives in me. He lives in you. And if Christ lives in you and has atoned for your sin, you are not the kind who shrinks back. You're not the kind who goes on sinning deliberately. You're the kind who have faith and preserve their souls. What does a man have if he gains the whole world but forfeits his soul? What does it mean to have everything money could buy, everything positionally that you could attain, to meet all the goals, to gain everything this world has to offer? And here's the other thing. Don't act like the world doesn't have anything to offer, because it does. And it's shiny, and it's new, and it feels good, and it looks good. But if the devil himself clothes himself as an angel of light, why would his people not do the same? It's all caskets with perfume, whitewashed tombs, leading us away from the Savior who purchased us with his own blood. What does it gain us if we gain all this world and in the end have nothing? There's a parable Jesus tells about a farmer. This man's a wealthy farmer, and he has so much excess that he needs to build more barns, bigger barns to hold all of his stuff, his crops. And he orders his people, we got to build bigger barns, more barns. He's stashing up. And God comes and says, tonight I require your soul from you. And the man dies. What did all that profit that man? To store up riches and treasures on earth, when we should be looking towards riches and treasures in heaven. I know it can sound a little cliche, and we've heard so many people over the years say that and preach that, but he's the great reward. So don't throw away your confidence in him. He started this section by talking about our confidence in him. Your confidence in Jesus as great high priest. Your confidence in Jesus as greater than Moses, greater than the angels, high above the heaven, the greater Melchizedek. Don't throw away that confidence that you have in him, because it has a great reward. And I wish we could illustrate how great a reward he is. But for now, we just have to trust him, that he is a great reward, that he's the reward, he's the inheritance. You know, my kids ask me questions about heaven often, and I don't have many answers. Truth loves dogs, but when he pets them, he swells up like he's so allergic to them. It's so bad. He wants a dog so bad. Man, he loves Asa, Kevin and Talera's dog. And when he's like hugging, like he licks Asa back, not really, but like, I mean, he's just like loving Asa. It's like, and we walk out of their house and he's just like, can't see, he can't breathe, you know? And it's like, will there be dogs and will I not be allergic to them in heaven? Like, bro, I don't really know, man. I'm pretty sure you won't be allergic to anything, but I don't know about dogs. I don't know. Let's change the subject real fast. I don't know everything about heaven. Oh, when we get there, will we see like people? Like, will we just be able to hang out and run around and fly through the clouds? You know, I don't know, man. I don't know. These guys want to be superheroes, you know? Like, I don't know. I'm like, but I always tell them, and it gets like, they're like, well, that's cool, but, you know. But I say the one thing I do know is this. I don't know if we'll want to do anything else but just sit at his feet. They're like, his feet? I'm like, I mean, it's more of an expression. You know, like, but I don't know all the things. I don't know all the aspects of the great reward. I know pastors and scholars will be like, well, you know, in Revelation there's this, and then in that there's this reward, and there's all these things, and there's crowns. Like, I don't care. Just he's the reward. You know, like every reward he could give us, it would pale in comparison to himself. Maybe he does give us crowns and glory and honor and houses. Well, I don't know. But what I do know is none of it will be greater than him. Could you imagine a being that is so bright he'll blind you? I don't recommend looking at the sun, but you can look at it for a minute. Paul got blinded instantly. Knocked completely off his horse. You know, I believe it's the Gospel of John. When they come to arrest Jesus, they say, we're looking for Jesus. Where is he? He says, it is I, and they fall to the ground. A being so... Do you know Revelation says he will be the sun? The S-U-N, he will be the light at the end. There'll be no need of stars and moons and galaxies. Woo! Need to get some water up here. He will be the light. He is the light. And I just don't think that there'll be anything we could turn our eyes to that would be greater than beholding his glory. So when I get there, y'all can do what you want. When I get there, I'm sitting at his feet and crying like a baby because he is my Redeemer. And all power and authority have been given to him, and we've given our lives to this gospel. Could you imagine looking at anything else when we finally get to see him? I don't care about streets paved with gold and pearly gates and my old family. I love my family. I don't care. Him, he's here. I'm with him now forever. I couldn't imagine ever. The heavenly hosts don't do anything else but fly around him and say, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. They don't do anything else. Day and night and day, the incense and prayers of the saints arise, and God's creation in heaven screams, holy, holy, holy. And the elders, I don't know who they are. There's a lot of different perspectives on that. There's 24 of them, and you know what they do with their... I imagine if they're elders in thrones, seated around the thrones, they got a little bit more authority than I do. And you know what they do with their thrones? They throw them at his feet because they're not worth anything. He's worth everything. And it's belief in him that'll help us persevere to the end. Praise the Lord. Water. That wasn't a very smooth landing, but we got to get on to the Connect card. Got a little fired up, my voice went away. It's faith in that Jesus that will keep us to the end. The Jesus of the Bible. Not the one that culture tries to create, not the one we could so easily create in our mind, but the one we find in these pages. The one who was and is to come. It's faith in him alone. And that will preserve our souls. So you have your phone and pop it out. Take a picture of that real quick. Thank you, Aaron, for the water. And listen, our next steps, two very practical things. Next step A is make a practical plan to draw near to Jesus. Like, start it this week. Don't delay. Some of you may already have it in place. I'm talking about a real practical plan, right? Look at your schedule. Make your schedule revolve around Jesus. If mornings work for you, pick mornings. If evenings work for you, pick evenings. If lunch at work works for you, pick lunch at work. If the nighttime, after the kids go to bed, whatever it is, I don't care. He doesn't care what time of day you spend with him. Just spend time with Jesus. Make a practical plan. Don't do something because you think you feel compelled in this moment to do it. Like, think about it. Make a practical, as practical as you possibly can. Hey, I don't have an hour long in my day to do said thing, but I have 3 15-minute windows, or I have 2 30-minute windows, a 30-minute one in the morning to pray and a 30-minute one at lunch to read, or whatever it is. Make a practical plan for your life. And work the rest of your day around that. Make time with him. Next step B, fast one distraction this week. One thing that distracts you or takes up your time. I know fasting is typically it's food. Fast some food with that. But fast a distraction this week for the whole week. Whatever it is that distracts you the most. A couple weeks ago, I deleted all my social apps. Man, feel weightless. Just awesome. If you find time on social media, try that. I had more social apps than I even knew I had. It was crazy. It's been so freeing. And next step C is the same one as last week, because I told you to read Hebrews 11, and it was a mistake because Hebrews 11 is next week. So read Hebrews 11 again. Come in here and you'll know it better than I do. And if you're down with those, let us know. Go ahead and submit that. And let's pray out. Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you for your word. I thank you that faith in you preserves our souls. I just pray we'd walk out of here encouraged. Even in the midst of such a stern warning about sin, God, you're just so good and gracious to let us see through your word that we have real and tangible confidence to be found in Jesus. And that confidence will propel us to mission, to work, and into eternity with you. I pray we would see the complete picture, Lord. I pray that we've been able to paint some of that today, God, but just minister to our hearts. Draw us closer to you, Lord. And as we make practical plans and do practical things to draw near to you, God, I pray that you would respond with your promise in James that as we draw near to you, you draw near to us. Let us feel your presence, God. We love you, Lord. We are literally here for you. Lead us not into any temptation, and keep us delivered from evil. For yours is the kingdom, power, and glory forever. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And I love you all. See you next week.